The way I started out with is I'm actually using, Crown has come out with a new Luminous Silk, Satin Finish foundation. And it's amazing. It gives you a really nice coverage, but still looks like skin. It's not really makeup-y. I'm just in love with them. So what I do is I get about 3 colors that are close to the skin tone, a lighter color, a medium, and a darker skin tone, and I kind of just mix throughout, so that way I have an idea of a little bit of all the skin tones in her skin. The way I'm going to start it off with is, especially with dark skin, I always want to remember that the skin has natural highlights. So even though it's really dark, if you get rid of all those natural highlights, like around the cheekbones and the inner part of the forehead, you make the person look very flat. So we want to keep all of those dimensions. This still applies with lighter skin clients as well, or models, or whoever you're doing yourself, but with darker skin especially. So the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to mix the lighter tone in with my medium tone, and find that right in between balance. I'm just using one of the foundation, a smaller foundation brush from the Syntho series. So what I do is I just paint right underneath, almost like you're doing football stripes, right down the center. So you keep wherever the lightness is naturally, or you want to create some lightness. I'm also going to go right into around the nostril area and around the corners of the mouth. So once I have that, you can go back and blend with the same brush. If you feel like you sometimes want to shear it and really get it blended, sometimes I'll go back with a sponge underneath, or over it, I'm sorry. And it just is a preference, whatever you personally like to use. If you like to use a sponge or a certain brush, again, there's no right or wrong. It's just what you're naturally used to and what you know how to work better. So I'm just kind of blending it out, working it down the center of the face. And look up for me. Trying to get as close as to the shadow that without removing it. Now what I do is I get a sponge and I wet it so it grows to like 3 times the size. But again, you can do this with any sponge. And I just kind of feather it out. And this is so I get kind of a little more of a sheerness, but it also blends all my foundation out. Again, if you feel like you need more coverage, just go back with your brush. But I like it too because the sponge being wet, it doesn't absorb a lot of the product. If you notice, where a dry sponge absorbs most of your product, this just blends it right out for you. I also like to use cold water to wet my sponge because it also is a cooling effect on the face. So that way the person doesn't sweat, and it closes the pores for the makeup not to soak up into the pores. So that's a little trick. So once I get my lighter skin, I'm going to go back, and now I'm going to mix my medium and my dark together. And again, it's just finding the skin tones that are mostly in the person that you're working on. The reason I'm going dark is if you look at her chest or her arms or her legs, all the skin on her body is darker, her face is a little lighter. So I want to keep that lightness in, again, to give the highlights of the face, and then create the depth on the outer part of the face so it matches the body. So she's still one tone when you look at her. Her face isn't darker and her body's one color, or her face isn't lighter and her body, again, is darker. And then I'm going to go back with just my middle tone, not any of the light or the dark mixed into it. Kind of just really pushing the makeup into the brush because I just want to feather it, almost like a dry brush effect, onto the jawline. And another trick is too, if you have them smile, the cheesiest smile that they can possibly smile, and just kind of work around the cheekbones. And that way you can kind of see where you're creating the depth and the lightness of the skin. We can go back in with concealer for underneath the eyes. Again, I like to go back in with my lighter skin tone color. So the same light tone that I used on the skin, I'm using the Crown concealers as well in the concealer palette. And I like to just mix one of the lighter tones. So I'm probably going to use between this color and this color to do her concealer. And again, I just kind of scrape it out on my palette, mixing the two together. Even mix it in with a little bit of the foundation if you feel like you want to, not to be, she doesn't have a lot of discoloration. It's more of just kind of highlighting, so it's not for coverage. That's why I'm sharing it out with just a little bit of the foundation that I used. So that way I'm not creating too much heaviness underneath the eye. Look up for me. So once you get your placement, again, just go back and blend. Look up for me again. And this is where you can kind of almost have two brushes in one hand that you're going to keep kind of going back and forth between. So you're blending out the concealer into the foundation, and there's no like line of where the two were. You don't want them to have white underneath the eyes, but you do want to create that highlight. So once I place it and kind of blend it out a little more, then I go back with my foundation brush. Just kind of mix the two. It's so much like painting.